विजन में प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति चाहते अविद्या विनाशयते विनाशयते विधिज्ञाय हरचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आगम जनार बंधु करुणा सिंधु आगम जनार बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया हे बेया जुषु त्रिभुवाना हे बेया जुषु त्रिभुवाना जुषु त्रिभुवाना दुई पालयो शरणा पालयो शरणा गुरुदेव पतित पवना प्रभुपाद पतित पवना जया प्रभुपदा जया प्रभुपदा जया प्रभुपदा जया प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा जया प्रभुपदा जया प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रसारिणी निर्विशेष शून्यवादी अशचारि सकारिणी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणी निर्विशेष शून्यवादी अशचारि सकारिणी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि भक्तवृंद प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Radha Shyam Sundar Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajacharanjana Jasodanandana Brajacharanjana Jamunatiravanabjadi Jamunatiravanabjadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 4, correct? Yes? Sanakam cha sanandam cha Sanatanamatamabho Sanat Kumaram cha Monim Nishkriyan Urdhva Retasaha Sanakam cha sanandam cha Sanatanamatamaboho Sanat Kumaram cha Munin Nishkriyan Urdhvareta Saha Sanakam cha sanandam cha Sanakam, Sanaka. Cha, also. Sanandam, Sananda. Cha, and. Sanatanam, Sanatana. Ata, thereafter. Atma Bohu, Brahma who is self-born. Sanat Kumaram, Sanat Kumara. Cha, also. Munin, the great sages. Nishkriyan, free from all fruitive action. Urdhvaretasaha, those whose semen flows upwards. Translation: in the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semen's flowing upwards. Purport. Although Brahma created the principles of nescience as a matter of necessity for those living entities who are destined to ignorance by the will of the Lord, he was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. He therefore created 4 principles of knowledge, here's the 4. Sankhya, or empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions. 2. Yoga, or mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage. 3. Vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding. And 4. Tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Brahma created the 4 great sages, Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat, to entrust them with these 4 principles of spiritual advancement, and they inaugurated their own spiritual party, or sampradaya, known as the Kumara Sampradaya, or later on as Nimbarka Sampradaya, for the advancement of bhakti. All of these great sages became great devotees. For without devotional service to the personality guided, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value. In addition to the sequence of events, we're being instructed what Brahma was feeling. Pretty confidential. Obedient, regretful, sinful, yet obedient, and then because the purpose of creation is not just reciprocating with the desires of the living entities for separate enjoyment. That's certainly a fundamental reason or force behind material creation. Why creation? Somebody asked me once. Why creation? 2 words. We wanted it. What? The personality Godhead reciprocates. We've been hearing over and over. It's not party spirit. It's not favoritism, not partiality. And thus, for those who are the rebellious souls, he has disdain. And so he puts them in a place where they suffer. Some people may do like that, but Krishna doesn't, the Creator doesn't do like that. He's reciprocating, and there's consequences for rebelliousness or misuse of free will. There's no malice in him. There's no partiality in him. He's just reciprocating. And the lesson is all these 5 things that were in the first verse, second verse, they're necessary for material enjoyment. And then comes other things and other things. But so the purpose is not just because we wanted it. The higher purpose is to correct that misuse. And to correct that misuse, then knowledge is needed, or as it's described here, he therefore created 4 principles of knowledge. 5 principles of ignorance and 4 principles of knowledge. It's not like the 5 outweigh the 4 necessarily. But so let's go through the 4. It's not in the verse, it's in the purport. Sankhya, principle of knowledge. The nice translation or meaning is empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions. Commonly, Sankhya is defined in very simple terms. Here's the one nice definition, but distinguishing between matter and spirit. Categories of matter over here, categories of spirit over there. Sankhya is the analytical study of categories of matter and spirit. And they're sequential. But to understand what's sequential is the unfolding, which Brahma's going to do. But he knows, but there are persons in the field of creation that don't know. So he gives them the opportunity to know. And the opportunity to know knowledge yields removal of ignorance. A very simple definition. Light is the absence of darkness. Light drives away darkness. Darkness cannot stand where there's light. Ignorance cannot stand where there's knowledge. Of course, there's theoretical and then there's practical. Theoretical gives light, but supposing one closes one's eyes, doesn't want to open their eyes, even there's knowledge they can't see. So knowledge requires receiving it properly from the right source. So Sankhya. And there are different deliverers of Sankhya. Kapila is the foremost, but there are others that speak Sankhya. Krishna speaks Sankhya in Bhagavad Gita. Then, yoga. Definition here. Mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage. Mysticism. Mysticism has parts. Many of those who are really serious about yoga have another idea than liberation of the soul from material bondage. Their idea is manifesting extraordinary siddhis or powers that are accrued through the mystic yoga process. But the purpose, that's not the real purpose. I mean, how does one get those from Supersoul? Because he's the source of all mysticism, Yogeshwara. But someone may get a little piece, a little piece, a little piece, a little piece, and so there's different mystic siddhis. They have names for them. So the aspiration may be not liberation of the soul from the clutches of matter or material existence, but that's the real purpose of the yoga process is outlined by Patanjali, and is to connect with Paramatma. And from that, one may or may not have mystic powers, but the real purpose of that, connecting with Paramatma, is the soul freed from its entanglement in material existence. Yoga requires proper understanding of matter and spirit. It starts with Sankhya, and then practices that lead to a disentanglement of the soul from matter, besides distinguishing matter and spirit. Yoga. 3, Vairagya. The acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life, to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understandings. Remember, these are all these 4 are items of knowledge, or categories of knowledge, or principles of knowledge. So Vairagya, standard in all of the Vedas, Jnana Vairagya. It's a couplet that's inseparable. Where there's knowledge, there's detachment. When there's ajnana, there's attachment. And that was one of the things from those 5 principles of false ego or material existence. Ajnana. And now the antidote is jnana, or detachment. That's the byproduct of knowledge. Vairagya. Complete detachment from material enjoyment in life, to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding, and finally tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. The language in 5th Canto Bhagavatam, Rishabdeva, is tapo divyam. Tapo divyam, not just tapas, but tapo divyam. And that tapas leads to knowledge. You know, it's also detachment, but knowledge of the supreme knowledge, because divyam is dedicated to the supreme. So it enhances access to the supreme, as opposed to being blocked by affinity for matter or the enjoyment of sense objects through the senses. One doesn't have to be a criminal or a wanton sense enjoyer to have knowledge of the supreme blocked by material life. You know, people in the mode of goodness are also blocked by this fundamental affinity for enjoying matter. In a mode of goodness way, of course, but enjoying matter is an obstacle. So here they are again. Sankhya, Yoga, Vairagya, and Tapas. Now I'm expecting a question. Which one of the 4 Kumaras goes with each one of the 4 items of knowledge? Anticipating that question, the answer is I don't know. And it doesn't have to be this one has this one, that one has that one. It can be they all represent. There's no at least there is not commentary. I checked. There's not commentary that says what Prabhupada doesn't say in the purport. So I don't know. And it's not necessary that it's 1 to 1, then 2 to 2, and 3 to 3. Then finally, in the purport, there's the Kumara Sampradaya, otherwise known as Nimbarka Sampradaya. And one of the contributions, important contributions, emphasis made by Bhaktisiddhanta was how the teachings of Lord Chaitanya unite the four sampradayas. In fact, the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which unites the four sampradayas. And according to Bhaktisiddhanta, there are two principles which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu adopted as fundamental elements of the Gaudiya line of teachings. They're both in relation to Krishna. The superlative role or function of the gopis, and the special importance of worship of Radha. Special emphasis in Nimbarka Sampradaya, which is very close to Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Vrajavadu Vargena, according to one commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, Srinath Chakravarti, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's emphasis was exactly that, same as Nimbarka Sampradaya. There isn't a greater method of worship of Krishna than that adopted by the gopis. Except the gopis then point to Govardhan Hill. He's the best. But they're the best. And we accept their opinion because they're the best. But Govardhan has special place in Srimad Bhagavatam and in Lord Chaitanya's line, because we have special regard for the gopis, as does Nimbarka Sampradaya. And the final point is, while these are items of knowledge, they're imbued with or filled with, invested with bhakti. It need not be said specifically, but it is said specifically because knowledge without bhakti isn't knowledge. Or bhakti gives rise to proper knowledge. The knowledge of the Kumaras included bhakti. And as the way Prabhupada says it in the final, all of these great sages became great devotees. Sages became great devotees. It's not like once upon a time they weren't devotees. Some time passed, a little light went on and said, oh, let's be devotees. But so they became, means they manifested bhakti explicitly, although they're bearers. Specifically, the Kumaras are in the category of Shakti Vaishavatars. Shakti Vaishavatars means the jiva was invested with Shakti of the Supreme Lord in full. You know, it's like how much illumination can a light bulb give? Depends on the watts. And what light bulb, living entity, can manifest all the wattage of the personality of Godhead? Answer, they can't. But they manifest the fullness of a living entity's capacity to manifest bhakti, or to jnana. So they're authorities. and their authority of knowledge is imbued with or invested with or filled with bhakti. Just reading recently a commentary that just like the Kumaras have the knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord, but it's implicit that they had bhakti, and then the fullness of that bhakti is manifest in Narada. He's the bearer of the Lord's bhakti shakti, while they are the bearers of the Lord's jnana shakti. But there must be bhakti in both, or anyone that has knowledge to offer others, because without bhakti there isn't knowledge. I want to do one more thing, and that is, there's a very short commentary that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote on this verse. And it's going to take for a moment for the computer to boot. Oh, there you go. There it is. Oh, it disappeared. Oh, fully. Three 3.12.4, right? Okay. His translation is quite the same. These four were free from material actions and strict in brahmacharya. The four aspects of vidya are, same list. These appeared in the form of the four Kumaras, since vidya is useless without bhakti. Bhakti is also present in these four items as a secondary item. Thus, even the Kumaras also have bhakti. Bhakti as the principal element takes the form of Narada. There's the reference. So he hasn't specified this one goes with this aspect, that one goes with that aspect, but they're manifesting knowledge. The antidote for those five principles of coverings. So now we have choices. Which would you like? Ignorance or knowledge? And we're busy making choices. I mean, conscious or not, we're making choices. And the categories of those choices are these ignorance and knowledge or mix. And when you choose the knowledge option on the menu, it means implicit is bhakti is there. Because without bhakti, there is knowledge. It's another ignorance. It's another covering. So Brahma's doing a good job. He's doing what Krishna wants, and he's doing, it's not like in addition to what Krishna wants, he's doing something extra, because it's part of the purpose of creation. Why creation? Not just because we want it. It's certainly because we want it, at least philosophically, but it's also to create an opportunity for living entities to correct their misuse of free will. Or another way of saying the same thing, what's the purpose of a prison house? Why a prison house? Well, there's people that are rebellious, and they'll make trouble for the law-abiding person. So rather than put them out of existence, they're given a place called a prison. So near the Brooklyn Temple, there is a place. It's a prison, but they got a perfumed name for it. House of Correction. Correctional facility, right? Prison, correctional facility. How much correctional purposes are there in the correctional facility? Somebody else will have to say, but at least that's a notion. It's certainly the notion in creation. Durga, she's in charge. Question. Who creates? A. Brahma creates. B. Durga creates. C. Neither of them create. D. All of the above. Multiple choice. Who would like to answer the multiple choice question? Here's the Brahma Samhita verse. Shristi stati pralaya sadhana shaktireka chaye vayasya bhuvanana vibharti Durga. So Shristi, Stiti, Pralaya, all three. Who has the answer? Let's do it again. Brahma creates. We're reading it. B. Durga creates. We just recited the verse. D. The Supreme Lord does it. And D. All of the above. Huh? All of the above. Say it again. He's the non-doer, but he does everything. So everyone has a role to play. That was easy. But it can be confusing if you don't know the answer and think, wait a minute. It says this in the Bhagavatam, it says that in Brahma Samhita. They sound contradictory. Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Everything is going on under his adhyaksha. And there's people that have their roles to play. Right? Do you agree or disagree? You're not sure. You're digesting. I'm asking. You agree, okay. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Maharaj, I have two questions. Is there any significance to the fact that the four principles of knowledge are embodied within the four Kumaras as persons? And relative to that, the five principles of ignorance don't have personality necessarily.
Why not? They're not mentioned doesn't mean there aren't. Next question. What are the five personalities, please?
No.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about the principle of knowledge of Sankhya to the empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions. So during this weekend, we have these breakout groups,
Yeah.
one of which is science and Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
And it seems to me that that topic is, at least for me, very interesting. For those of us that like to exercise our puny intelligence, is that exploration of that topic can be compared to Sankhya.
Yes.
And the
Or
point
say it the other
end-
way. Sankhya is a subset of science, spiritual science.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spiritual science. Prabhupada would say it so many times. It's not a religion. Here's a definition of religion. Here's a definition of science. This is a science. Then he would go on and say, there's the authority, and then there's the practical experience. We know things by authority. And we know things by practical experience. Put them together, and there you get science. Science means to know. Skide, to know. Latin, to know. So, it's a science. And it's part of science. Knowledge is part of science. I mean, Sankhya is part of knowledge, which is part of spiritual science. It's a subset of what that breakout group is. You know, given an opportunity, you can say a mandate or however they want to deal with it. It's how the group wants to deal with it, not just the facilitators want to deal with it.
And I really appreciate the last section of how bhakti is like this substratum that powers these various facets of knowledge, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in our pursuit of understanding spirituality and science, that the connection with Prabhupada, the mood and mission of Prabhupada in understanding the difference between science and Krishna consciousness is one of the key aspects of bhakti as we try to explore.
Yes. And therefore, he gave emphasis to it. You know, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and spoke about it and tooted the horn. Gave funds so they could do their work. Encouraged them to write. Encouraged them to, to challenge. Encouraged them to state fundamental principles of spiritual science. Spiritual science. To the scientific community. In his own way, and then the scientists had their own way. Prabhupada was confrontational and the others were explaining, but also confrontational, as we know. So, further?
I hope the preamble to my question is not too terribly long-winded, Maharaj. Because I was awestruck in Udupi by your statement that obedience is the first law of discipline, I've been hearing this week from this lens, because we're leading up to Vyasa Puja, that there is no meaning to being a disciple without being obedient. So in the morning classes, we're hearing of the obedience of Lord Brahma, considering this to be a sinful act, yet...
In the morning class, we're hearing about...
the obedience of Lord Brahma.
Yes.
Who considers this to be a sinful act, and yet he's acting in obedience.
Yes.
In the evenings, we're hearing about the obedience in the Pandavas. So, and Bhishma Dev, he's assailing the Lord, but he's in obedience to the plan of the Lord. Yudhishthira Maharaj considers what a sin I've committed, but he acted in obedience to the Lord's instructions. Arjuna constructing a bed of arrows, this remorseful scene that you read from yesterday. And yet, Arjuna was not immediately obedient.
And not immediately obedient.
He placed his doubts. Here we are hearing of the Kumaras.
But you know why he wasn't immediately. It was induced.
Yes. And here we are hearing of the Kumaras, and the word that is used is they were unwilling to be obedient. So, and yet these are completely transcendental personalities. So within this relationship of obedience, there is so much room for individual expression of our needs.
She's chuckling. She likes the discretionary part with obedience, right? We hit her button.
So Lord Brahma has created this conception of self-deception. You know, we have this false sense of identification with. So when we are trying to mature in this relationship of obedience while also expressing our needs, our individuality,
Yes.
how can I more and more align with the proper conception of
How can more and more align with?
the proper conception of, you know, who I really am, rather than just the conditioned sense of who I am, what my needs are, what my values are.
Well, that's our topic tonight. Purity. Striving for purity. Purity is the force. We're not there yet. We're not the unalloyed devotees yet. So your question is, how can I get there? How can I properly discern when should I exercise this discretionary power that I have at my facility? It's part of who I am. To understand it in the deeper sense, the fully spiritual sense, who am I? How do I use this faculty to get there? Pure devotion. Bhakti will protect you, and bhakti means striving for Krishna's pleasure. Supposing you select wrongly. It's your directionally, good intention, but it's not really what's pleasing to Krishna. Out of the shades of choices that you may have, any one of us. You should remain open at every step, going down the path of having made a choice. You may pause before you make a choice, but then at some point you have to make a choice. And I wrote an essay about this 20-something years ago. How do you make choices? How do you decide? I remember in high school, Robert Frost. Those of you from India, you don't know who Robert Frost is. He's an American poet. And the poem, I forget what the title of it is, but it goes, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Sorry I could not travel both." Barsana, you know that one? You've heard it. It's a phrase. It's just that the introduction to, then he goes further. So life has choices. It never stops. There's always choices. How to make the right choice when you have choices. So there's imperfect as we are, because part of your question was, or the preamble of your question is having values. I will assume that my values are less than perfect because I'm less than perfect. But I want to make my choices aligned with my values, allowing that I may have to recalibrate or revise or refine or purify my values, articulate them clearly. If I don't go through that exercise, then it's, just a life of suffering, perpetual. Sincere suffering. But the sincere person that turns that sincerity capacity towards Krishna will get some signal, super soul signal, Guru Sadhu Shastra signal. And I'm less than perfect. I'm not going to hear the Guru Sadhu Shastra signal perfectly. But I have to act. So bhakti will protect you. That is, the course correction will come. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Krishna from within will correct. And I trust in Krishna. And the connection with Krishna, the bhakti principle. It's just, supposing the bhakti principle is weak, supposing, or sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker, in the unsteady devotional stage, sometimes stronger. So I'm going to get it less wrong or less right as I go along in the unsteady, the anishita bhakti stage. But I trust in bhakti because the principle I accept. I mean, that's what our topic is tonight. You'll be there? You have some other thing? Okay. So when you make a choice, this is part of this little essay that I wrote. I imagine I could find it somewhere. I know where I put it. It was in a file cabinet that I don't have anymore. You make a choice and your radar screen is up to take a signal from Krishna that says no. And then you revise. You can step back, or you can redirect, or you're open to Krishna's prompt that says that wasn't the right choice, or please refine your choice this way. Or someone who is a guide for you in your life, you consult and they say, try it or something, and then they see it's not working rightly. Why don't you revise it this way? So, Guru Sadhu Shastra. And be ready to revise when decisions. Everything, even 10 steps down the wrong road, has its consequences. And you accept the consequences because it's your choice and you take responsibility for your choices. But you can also take responsibility to correct the course. Someone else who has the microphone. Yeah.
The 4 principles of knowledge, can we think of it as 4 legs of
Dharma?
On which knowledge can we develop? Sorry. I'll try to rephrase that. So for us to develop knowledge, is it resting on these 4 items?
A conditional yes. You heard the sound vibration. Because it can be taken not correctly. Knowledge for knowledge's sake. There's an argument. Some people, knowledge for knowledge's sake. And we would say, no. Knowledge for what's the purpose that knowledge is directed towards. Or so, in other words, same as this comment that you and Jivana made, the fortified by bhakti, that is, then the answer is yes. Not a qualified yes, but that's the qualifier. And bhakti means for the pleasure of Krishna.
So, yes, with that assumption of our goal is to develop bhakti, I guess I'm asking because, when I'm looking at these items in my own life, some of those are on a very, very wobbly platform.
All right.
And so is that like a
You strengthen,
disqualification.
you fortify them by the substrata. Not just by, so, for example, here's a for example. There's a Mayavadi, Madhusudana Saraswati, celebrated Shankara follower who wrote books, and he was super duper into Sankhya and analyzed everything in such a way, super soul disappeared, and it's just Sankhya. No, Brahman, because that's reality, but he didn't dismiss Sankhya because it's not Brahman. It's the fundamental feature of how the material energy works resting on Brahman. And he was like super duper, analytical, bulletproof, analytically, because that's what Sankhya is. It's an analysis function. It's an intellectual function. Analysis is an intellectual function. So some persons like Sankhya a lot. Mayavadis or impersonalists or scholars or puffy wuffies, they really like Sankhya. The German scholars, they really like that portion of the Vedas. And they used it to build weapons and things. Because it works. With no interest at all in bhakti. So now, back to you. You're not Madhusudana Saraswati or German scholars that wanted to build weapons. You're a bhakta that has, it's not as strong as it could be, should be, you would like it to be. But it's there to some extent because, you have a certain nature and you're not going to the Himalayas to do tapas and yoga, but you're a bhakti yogi. So, now, what do you do when you're in that space? That each one of these four items of knowledge are not as strong as they could be. They're wobbly, as you used. Strengthen bhakti. And you strengthen them because there's the affinity for matter is very strong. Good people also have affinity for matter. So you're a good person. And there's affinity for matter. Good affinity for matter. But as opposed to the darker affinity for matter. But affinity for matter. So the detachment that comes from each of these can be strengthened. But it's strengthened by bhakti, not just by detachment. Or becoming a better Sankhya scholar or something, better yogi. Does that address your question? Not exactly. Strengthen bhakti. That's where your faith goes. And then if you want to strengthen any one of these four, it's good to strengthen any one of these four. And any one of these four helps the other three. Tapo divyam, for example. It helps strengthen the other three. Your acumen for discernment between matter and spirit and disentangling from matter or detachment, etc. Tapo divyam. For the right purpose. Others? Yes? Online.
Sri Vallabha Prabhu's question. Considering the analogy of the prison and that the prisoners are given the opportunity to correct their misuse of free will, that includes taking lives of innocent others, no amount of atonement will bring those lost lives back.
Correct.
How does one reconcile such irreparable damage through Krishna consciousness?
You can't repair irreparable. But the consequence, the karmic consequence can be dissolved. And by so doing, benefit is also goes to the the person on the receiving end. It's very similar to the discussion we had last night when Yudhisthira, after the coronation ceremony, had a discussion with Vyasadeva, what's the method of atonement, given so many persons have been killed and protectors are no longer there to protect those who they were protecting. So what's the atonement? And Vyas took him through what the methods are, and engaged him in the processes of, and then he still had further questions. So it doesn't change. So using your question to what Maharaj Yudhisthira had done, it can't bring back the life of those who were killed or those who are now unprotected because the protectors are gone. You can't repair that. But the reaction and the tendency to do again, that was Yudhisthira's concern. And there's things on the physical or the material plane, subtle and physical material plane, that one can do. And there's duties going forward that can also keep one protected, but ultimately it's bhakti. It can't undo the done or the harm, but benefit can go to the person who's becoming the bhakta, and then others who are the receiving end of mistakes that were made can benefit from the bhakti that's accrued. That's what we can do for mistakes. Unintentional primarily, but maybe even intentional, just due to ignorance. Something else?
This question is from Gopal Hari Prabhu. You mentioned how austerity, tapaha, purifies one's existence. Also, complete detachment from everything material. Some devotees say that renunciation is the result of purification and not the means of purification. Bhakti is the means of purification. So what is the proper understanding?
Both. I mean, the purification includes bhakti. It's just the substrata of these four is bhakti. Or conversely, without bhakti, there's not purification. It's a bungee cord, but it's not purification.
There's an extension of the question. For example, in Chaitanya Charitamrita mentions that Kalidas received a mercy received by none other due to his eagerness to receive the Mahaprasada of the devotees. So would his efforts be considered austerity or bhakti or both?
Do you understand the question without the microphone?
Chaitanya Charitamrita mentioning Kalidas,
Yeah.
who always went around to
Yeah.
Is that
Mahaprasad.
considered bhakti or austerity or both?
Oh, it's both. But, bhakti isn't exclusive of austerity. And real austerity isn't exclusive of bhakti. He wanted the prasad of the Vaishnavas. That's bhakti. And there was austerity involved, that's okay. Something else? Anyone in the room? Yes?
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, in today's class, you mentioned that.
Go ahead.
At today's class, you mentioned that people in the mode of goodness can be blocked and they tend to enjoy the material things. Could you please elaborate?
Sure.
More?
This is a topic for Saturday night. What does piety bring? Fruits of piety, right? And there's 4 categories and subdivisions of those 4 categories. High birth, opulence, knowledge, janma, aishvarya, shruta, beauty, and so there's 4. Now, supposing somebody has fruits of piety. They're pious, or somewhere back there they've been pious, and fruits of piety have come. What's the tendency? Enjoy the fruits of piety. There's the answer to your question. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that tendency to be the enjoyer of the fruits of piety is one of the contaminations of the heart. But we'll discuss it more tomorrow night. Stay tuned. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.